The universe of Dune, or the Duneverse, is a fictional universe that was conceived by the writer Frank Herbert and depicted by him in the Chronicles of Dune series of books, which was recreated in a number of film adaptations. It's possible to discuss the Dune universe for hours and hours. However, we will focus on the most awesome creation of the author, both in size and in fame, the Sandworm. It may be considered to be the signature element of the Herbert saga. The worm, infamously known as SHAI-HULUD by the inhabitants of the desert, is not merely a giant creature of Arrakis, but is also a philosophical symbol. In John Schoenherr's illustration for the first magazine publication of Dune, 1965, the worm's mouth consists of 3 parts, although it is not specified anywhere in the novel that the creature's jaws are arranged in such a manner. The artist later created several cover designs in the same vein. The idea was adopted by the designers of David Lynch's 1984 screen adaptation. As for obvious reasons, we won't be seeing large sandworms on our planet, furrowing through the Sahara or the Atacama Desert of Chile, and you can be confident it's for the best. But nobody knows what the chances are of finding a creature in deep space that resembles the creation of the science fiction writer. We propose taking this topic into consideration in greater detail, and to answer the question, could the worm SHAI-HULUD possibly exist in reality? To begin with, let's clarify what this giant crawling creature is. Now then, according to Herbert's description, the sandworm is composed of 100 to 400 individual segments enclosed in a thick, silvery gray, leathery shell. Each of the segments has its own primitive nervous system, so it is almost impossible to kill the worm. Even if one of the segments is destroyed, the other parts will take over its functions. Sandworms are enormous, 400 meters in length, and the largest individuals exceed 2 kilometers. The mouth of the worm measures 80 meters in diameter. Just imagine a huge mouth the size of a 26-story building, surrounded by a multitude of sharp teeth. Yes, indeed, SHAI-HULUD is every fisherman's worst nightmare. But the most distinctive aspect is that the worm from Herbert's universe is not a member of the animal kingdom, but a silicon-based life form that fears water. All living creatures we know have common basic features. They grow, reproduce, respond to environmental stimuli, are able to adapt, and sometimes change. In addition, they have a common basis for all biochemistry. They are made of long chains of carbon molecules that use water for metabolism and energy. But it is possible that a non-carbon-based life form exists somewhere, and that such a life form would be very different from what we are used to. The ability of carbon to form long chains makes it an ideal base for the building of sufficiently complex molecules that the body requires to carry out vital functions. Yes, carbon is great for forming complex molecules, but it's not the only element in nature that can do it. There is also silicon, which sits under carbon on the periodic table of elements. This tells us that theoretically, such a life form is possible. In addition, if a sandworm generates oxygen, then the question arises, what does it use as a source of energy? The answer to this is facilitated by the example of one extraordinary microorganism called the chemotrophic bacterium. This bacterium uses chemicals to stay alive, usually hydrogen sulfide, to provide itself with the energy needed to synthesize carbohydrates from CO2 and release oxygen. Since H2S is often emitted from underground volcanic craters, it is the most likely source of subterranean energy in dunes. And because sandworms live deep in the bowels of the planet, far from the sun and any processes of photosynthesis, they would have to use chemicals, most likely H2S or hydrogen sulfide, to provide essential energy. As far as the movement of the giant worm in the desert is concerned, that is an extremely interesting question. This is because the truth is that the existence of sandworms on Earth isn't possible, because despite the fearsome appearance, ordinary sand will simply crush the poor fellows. So we will try to move to another planet, where two important conditions will be met. First of all, low gravity is necessary for the movement of such a massive organism under the surface. The less, the better. A planet like Mars with a magnetic field is a good candidate. Secondly, clay is best suited for the movement of the sandworm, but on the planet recreated by the author, the events take place in a desert. To some measure, part of the sand is a possible habitat. If we are talking about the large grains that make it easier to breathe and to dig a little deeper, quartz chips work just fine. Now SHAI-HULUD is comfortable and perhaps smiling, but that's better left unseen. Having considered a few thoughts, what sort of a conclusion can we reach? The fundamental problems of the massive sandworm are the weight of the sand, water, food, and air. But that's worth nothing that the biology of Herbert's worm remains largely unclear, such as whether or not it is a vertebrate, how it moves, and what it eats, besides people fleeing in panic. Instead of this, he focuses on the behavior of the worms as well as the effect they have upon the people of Dune. At first glance, based upon the data that we have, the worm SHAI-HULUD is absolutely unrealistic. On the other hand, anything and everything is possible beyond the known universe.